Hello and welcome to the Love Project's Nothing But Love webinar series. My name is Russ Lewis and I coordinate ACON's aging program, best known as the Love Project or Living Older Visibly and Engaged. The Love Project aims to empower older LGBTQ+ communities, including people living with HIV, to lead healthy, active and more socially connected lives. I would like to respectfully acknowledge the Gadigal people, who are the traditional owners and custodians and first people of the lands on which I'm joining you from today. I'd also like to pay my respects to elders past and present, and would like to extend my respect to any Aboriginal or Torres Strait Islander people who are joining us today. I'd also like to thank the New South Wales Government for supporting this webinar series. We have been collaborating with ACON's Northern Rivers team to deliver several in-person events as well as the webinar. And we've successfully done that. And this is actually the last in the series, but the good news is we'll be able to continue them on. The Love Project marks its 10th anniversary this year. And what better way to celebrate than to chat with fabulous LGBTQ community heroes, activists, icons, performers, creatives, sports people, authors, and businesses who represent our older communities so well. So without further ado, it's my great pleasure to introduce Ian Roberts. Ian, I've just lost my notes, 1 second. Ian is an actor, advocate, and professional sports identity. Welcome, Ian.
It's nice to be invited along. Thank you. That's a very flattering that's introduction. Thank you.
Oh, look, I've had a wonderful time, Ian. I want to say you've been in my life forever because we're a similar age. So I've sort of grown up with you, and I feel like I know you, but we've never actually really spoken. I know that you're probably got a bit of a long friendship with my partner. But yeah, so it's really been fascinating to sort of take the deep dive and be reminded of some of the sort of critical points in your history that I've sort of been witness to, but sort of distant from. So I guess starting with sort of being born in London and moving to Australia when you were 2 as part of the 10-pound POMs
Very good. You really
scheme.
have done your homework, haven't you? Well, okay, yes.
Yeah, no, that was fascinating because I remember the 10-pound POMs thing happening, and moved to South Australia to start with. Is that correct?
They originally moved to Western Australia, but my parents kind of jumped back on the boat and didn't like Western Australia. That we stayed. I think they stayed there for like a week, and they did want to come to Sydney. So that's it was only a very brief stay in Western Australia.
Oh, okay. And then you end up in Sydney straight after that. Okay. And Dad sounds like a sort of formidable character. Ray was his name, and he was an amateur boxer and construction worker. Is that correct?
Yeah, my dad was a truck driver in the UK. Yes, and he was a semi-professional boxer. My earliest memories of my dad was my dad taught my brother and I to box. That was before we did anything else.
Yeah.
They are my earliest memories of my dad just holding up his hands and doing that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Do you remember much about sort of those earlier years growing up were you in Maroubra or sort of in that area?
Yeah. We lived in the hostels in Matraville for about 3 or 4 years, and we then moved to Maroubra for about 4 or 5 years, and we moved. It was all housing commission. Then we moved out to the housing commission in South Coogee. I do have like really fond memories of Maroubra, but very different time back then. I'm 60. You know,
and was it rough? Was it rough, or was it just a good community? Sort
of... I don't know. It's weird when people ask me that. Like, I don't remember it being rough. I know, we were my mum and dad were very working class. My brother. I have a brother, an older brother, an older sister, and a younger sister. My mum and dad came to Australia 27 years old with 3 kids in tow. Wow. I had my younger sister, and they didn't they didn't come to stay. They were only coming for a 2-year holiday
Right.
because that whole £10 pom thing was, you had the minimum was you had to come in for at least 2 years, and then if you didn't want to stay, you could go back. So my mum and dad thought they were coming just for a 2-year holiday.
Yep.
But things kind of worked out. My mum and dad were very working class. They didn't have a lot of value. They didn't see a lot of value in education. I mean, my brother and I were at the most, we're only ever going to be. I sound like I'm diminishing being a tradesperson, but the thing my dad and mum hoped for is we would become tradesmen, and my sisters, I think theirs was going to be either a secretarial role or like my mum was a cleaner my whole life. My dad was a truck driver in the UK, and when he came out here, he was a process worker. But there wasn't a lot of value in education. I mean, that was just the way it was.
What's mum's name?
Jean.
Jean. Okay. Ray and Jean. Good hearty names. And are they still with us?
My dad passed away 10 years ago, but my mum is. It's kind of my relationship. I've always had a good relationship with my parents.
Yeah.
But I will say, since my dad has passed away, particularly the last 4 or 5 years, my mum and I have become very close. So we have it sounds weird, but we have such a good friendship now. I mean, it's.
Was dad a bit of a barrier for sort of enhancing that, or was it just sort of more open or something, or easier now?
Yeah, it's kind of difficult to explain. I had a good relationship with my father, but my dad was quite strict and quite tough, but fair, but fair. But very family orientated. Everything was always about family. It was very family orientated
and supportive of you, kind of doing whatever you wanted to do.
To a point.
Yeah.
I mean, I suppose we'll get into it later about when I came out. But when I do you want me to talk about that?
I was going to ask, when did you think that you first have feelings for men? Because lots of us don't have language for that, but we know kind of at an early age that there might be that attraction. Do you kind of remember around what time you might have kind of started to have those feelings?
Absolutely. It was like when we were living in Maroubra, and I would have been. I mean, I don't know how young I was, but I can never remember not being same-sex attracted. If that's what it was not even that. It's not even that when you're 5 and 6 or 7.
Yeah.
I just knew that I wanted to be. My next door neighbour's name was Barry Riley. I was like, as far back as I can remember, I just wanted to be with Barry Riley.
I think we all had one of those.
I just wanted to hang out with Barry Riley, and it was kind of weird. I mean, not weird. Barry's gone on to he went on to get married. Barry's not gay, not as far as I know. But we used to kiss and cuddle, and I just wanted to be with Barry.
I think I had mine was Neville, who was a friend of the family's, and we used to all water ski. I grew up in Newcastle, and we used to water ski on Lake Macquarie. And there was all these other families that would come in and join us, but there was a Neville, and Neville was so damn handsome. And even as a young kid, I thought, it was just like Neville was something that I was aspiring to.
Yeah, I don't know if it's a sexuality or whatever you want to call it, but I just wanted to hang out with Barry. And hold Barry's hand, and we'd kiss and that, like in private. It was whatever that is.
And
I will say this: I've never been uncomfortable ever in my life being same-sex attracted. I've never had an issue in my head. I mean, I knew even back then. I mean, I can tell you when I first knew I was different. It was 1972, and the reason I know that is because it's when Checkerboard. The first time 2 gay men had kissed on TV. I remember that moment because I was sitting there watching the TV with my dad. And then the 2 Peters kissed, and I was like, oh, that's what I do with Barry Riley next door. And I was like, oh, that's what I do. Like I was quite comfortable with it.
Great memory. Yeah.
My dad's reaction was, "Oh, those, well, those. Am I allowed to swear in this thing?
Yeah. Left side. Yep.
Oh, those fucking faggots make my skin crawl."
Yeah.
Then I thought, oh shit, that's probably something I shouldn't tell Dad about that, Barry.
Yeah. And you would have only been
I
7.
was 7 years old, and I know that
Yeah.
for a fact because I went to the 50th anniversary about 3 years ago of
Right.
that show.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, but I remember that moment like crystal clear. I'm sure my memory's been embellished, but I do remember that being, oh, this is something I need to keep away from my dad. Like my dad doesn't need to know about this. But I had flirtatious like boyfriends and that all through growing up, and I was never comfortable with it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And were you always, like, before you started sort of playing footy and went into professional football, were you always sort of sporty and sports orientated?
And I mean, I was always like a good sports person, but it's kind of weird. Sport became like it's almost like a daycare center for your mum and dad because my brother and I go off to footy training, and the 2 girls would go off to netball. Or, I mean, it was almost like, and it was a different time back then. Like we used to stay out, even when we were 5, 6, and 7, like until the lights came on in the street. We had to come home then. It was that old rule.
Yeah.
Like the thing that strikes me most about, not strikes, that sticks with me most is in my mid-30s, I got diagnosed, with dyslexia.
Yeah.
When I was a kid, dyslexia wasn't a thing. Right? And I've got a parrot on my back.
I know, cute.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, that's all right.
And my 2 cats have gone crazy now. Sorry. Anyway, dyslexia wasn't a thing, and I could never read and write. I didn't learn to read and write till my 30s. I tell this story because we all have that one teacher that changes your life. I met that teacher. His name was Kevin Jackson in my mid-30s, but I'll talk about that after. But in first class, I was 6 years old. I had to repeat first class because I couldn't read and write. To me, it was just like chicken scratches. I literally couldn't process what was on the page or whatever it was. And I used to think I was just, and everyone else used to think you're just dumb or slow or whatever it was. And that was always the thing I was most embarrassed about my whole life, that I couldn't read. And that I was always a year older than everyone else in my age going forward in school. I was always really I was that kid that once a teacher asked me to read from the book at school, I'd make it about something. I'd turn the chair up and then I'd get sent out. But I was always getting sent home or suspended.
Yeah.
It was all about because I was so terrified that I was so ashamed I couldn't read and write. I always felt dumb growing up.
Yeah. And you're right, the dyslexia was not diagnosed at that time, so there was a lot of kids struggling.
I was always in the special class for reading and writing, which was was always humiliating. Ended up kind of being my superpower in the end.
Yeah. Well, look, let me go through just a brief history of your football if you sort of step into this, because there's layers to you that I found when I was diving into kind of you, and things overlap. But sort of the football career started as with the mascot Jets, and then you had your first.
I was 5 years old when we started at Maroubra.
Wow, okay.
When we were living at Maroubra, I started playing. I actually went to the footy with. My dad thought I was playing soccer at first because we were English. I just said I'm going to play footy, and we went with Barry Riley and his family, and I started playing with their team. That was 5, and we moved to Coogee, and I played for Maroubra Diggers. Then we moved to Botany, and I ended up playing for Mascot. I was about 15, I think. Yeah, 15 when I started playing for Mascot Jets. Yeah. And I stayed there until I was about 20, and I ended up getting graded, called up to play for South.
Yeah, the Rabbitohs. And I had to laugh in the Winfield Cup.
Very good. The Winfield Cup, very good.
Yeah, 86 in the Winfield Cup. I hadn't thought of the Winfield Cup. Imagine sports things being very supported by tobacco nowadays.
It's quite, a totally different world back then.
Yeah. Well, I was going to ask, like the football career was like 85 to 98 professional,
Yeah,
including 9 appearances in the State of Origin, with 6 wins and as part of the Australian team. It all felt, when I was looking back, quite rough. It was like,
it
is
was
it
a
my
very different
imagination to
game.
think that footy was a lot rougher than what it is now, even though it's still pretty
There was
rough?
probably a lot more for anyone who follows the game would understand what I'm about to say.
Yep.
There was probably back in when I was playing, there was a lot more one-on-one confrontation.
Yeah.
The rules were different too. There was like, for anyone who doesn't understand rugby league, I'm probably going to sound like I'm about to start speaking Greek. But like the whole scrum situation,
Yeah.
it used to be a competition that you might win the ball against the feed. Now it's all offensive
Yeah.
based play. So anyone who feeds the ball to the scrum, they're definitely going to win the scrum. It was a very different,
Yeah.
but the rules have changed to make it a much more entertaining game. I actually think it is as well
Yeah.
than what I played. But yeah, you're right. It was physically a lot more brutal,
Yeah.
and there was a lot more. I mean, it's just the era I played in. It was just
Yeah.
a lot
Yeah.
more like dirty. Yeah, like it was.
Yeah, even sort of when you watch that footage, even kind of just the intensity of the game, like it was like it's all pristine and polished, and everything looks kind of brand new now, like all the uniforms and the playing
Yeah,
field. Back there it was just a bit more raw, and so it was
absolutely. I mean,
interesting to see that difference.
yeah, the game's a lot. There's a lot more data involved in the game too now. It's a lot more
Yeah, yeah,
scientific. It's a lot more scientific. I mean, it's literally played in centimeters. Like
yeah,
the
yeah,
games and that. And it just what you're talking about. Just even the jumpers that we used to wear and the boots that we used to, like everything
yeah,
now is super flash. It like
yeah,
like it looks fantastic. But back in when I was playing, I mean, to give you an example, like it's totally professional now, like rugby league, rugby union, the AFL, totally professional. So the players, they clock on at 6 o'clock Monday morning, and they clock off at
yeah.
Sunday afternoon after the game, at whatever time the game finishes. Back when I was playing, like we used to start training at 4:30, so everyone could get home from work
Yeah.
and
Wow.
then go to training, right?
Yeah,
But the training was quite intense. I'm not saying it was any easier, but very different world. We all had jobs back then.
yeah,
I mean, I didn't give up. I'm an electrician by trade. I didn't give up being on the tools till when I joined Manly in the 90s. It was about 92. I gave up
oh,
working full time.
yeah.
Um, I
So
mean,
that's tough. So that's pretty full on. Like you're working full time and you're playing.
there was a lot less money in
Yeah,
the game back then. Like
yeah,
I think when
yeah,
my first year at South, um, I love South. I think I made about $12,500, and I thought I was hot. Like I
yeah,
thought I was very flash. You know what I mean? Like
yeah,
I was rolling. I was an electrician by trade as well.
yeah,
But I thought I was rolling.
yeah. Wow. And just to give you a few accolades to the people watching, in 2000 you were awarded the Australian Sports Medal for your contribution to Australia's international standing in rugby league, and then in 2005 you were named one of the 25 greatest ever New South Wales players. So that's pretty big. That's pretty
yeah,
major.
yeah. I went all right. I mean, like yeah. I mean, I was. I mean, I don't think it's controversial me saying, I was a decent player. I mean, I know. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Um, uh, yeah. I mean, I was. But I always had that a bit of a chip on my shoulder that
yeah.
for other reasons too. But yeah.
Well, let's maybe allude to that and get into that. Like, so you came out in 95, so you were 30. I
Yeah, I
know.
came out in '90. Well, I mean, the crazy thing is when you say came out, I mean, I came out publicly. Everyone knew I was gay. When I left South in 1989 to go to Manly in 1990,
Yep.
um, uh, everyone knew I was gay. Like it was everyone knew I was gay then.
Yep.
But I had this. I mean, and this is something I'm quite. I wish I'd had a different perception back then. I used to feel
Yeah.
like I shouldn't have to come out. People should just accept that I'm gay.
Yeah.
My partner, when I was playing at Manly, my partner Shane, you know the mascots, so people run around in the big suits with
Yeah.
the rings, and that was Shane. Like,
Ah.
everyone knew he was my partner. He was, you know, the guy doing the cartwheels in the big seagull.
That's
That was
fantastic.
Shane.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah.
like everyone knew Shane was my partner.
Yeah.
It wasn't. It wasn't. Oh, there's my partner Dan's home
Yeah.
on TV.
Hello. Welcome.
Dan. He's got his headphones in.
Oh.
Um, uh, what was it? Oh yeah, Shane. Like so everyone knew Shane was my partner.
Yeah.
Shane came to all the like functions and whatever.
Did it change when you did come out publicly? Like, it sounds like you were sort of accepted and there's no real dramas, but it felt like it just was notched up quite a few levels when you came out publicly.
It allowed everyone to breathe out. You know,
Yeah.
that we could talk about it.
Yeah.
You know, over in '94 on the Kangaroo Tour, I tell a story. It's kind of when I first came out to the team. It was on the Kangaroo Tour. We played a test match at Wembley. We got beaten. We played like it was like 100,000 people there, and we were expected to win. And my form on tour had been really good. I was like, I didn't expect to get dropped. Even that game, I had quite a good game, even though we'd been beaten. And my partner Shane at that time, he was over in England following the tour, like going to the games and that. Now, one of the rules for a touring team is that players' wives, girlfriends, and hence partners aren't allowed to stay with you in the hotel. We have to stay as a unit within the team, right? Yes, partners and wives and girlfriends can come over on tour and we'll pop in and have lunch with you and all that. That's fine. But the team stays together as a unit.
Yeah.
So anyway, yeah, after the first test match, we got beat. And I felt fine. My game was fine. It was disappointing getting beaten. But on the Tuesday or Wednesday after the game, I get a phone call off the coach, Bobby Fulton. Now, Bobby Fulton was also my coach at Manly.
Yeah.
Bobby Fulton also knew Shane, even though we'd never spoken about Shane. He was well aware of who Shane was. We'd never had that conversation. Anyway, so we get this phone call, and Terry Hill was my roommate at the time. Terry actually got the phone call, and he picked it up, and then he took the phone away, and he says, "Oh, it's Bose, Robbo," thinking he's going to cut me, right? Now, for anyone who's playing sport as a professional sportsman knows, it's all about playing the game. Like that's all you want to do that's all your focus is. I hadn't thought it was anything else. He's going to drop me. I said, there's no way. Anyway. So Terry put Bose on, and Bose is, and that's Bobby Fulton. Bobby Fulton's one of the original immortals.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like a legend, and like a lovely guy.
Yeah.
Anyway, so Bose is on the phone. He says, "Rob, I need to see you now, mate. Come up to the room." And obviously, Bose is staying in the penthouse, isn't he? So I get the lift up to the room, and then I walk to the front door, and the door's just ajar, right? And I have a look in, and there's Bose, and he's pacing the room. Now that doesn't sound like much, but Bose, anyone who knew Bobby Fulton knows he's as cool, always as cool as a cucumber. Nothing ever got him ruffled. Yeah. I'm standing there looking, and I felt like I was there for ages, but I was like, just watching him walk this, like pace this room. And then I knocked on the door, and he says, "Oh, Robbo, come in, mate. Sit on the bed." So I sat down, and then he starts doing this pacing again. And this is really unusual behaviour for Bose. Right. And he's pacing the room, and I'm like, and then it got to the point, I'm like, "Bose, please stop, mate. What's happened?" I'm now thinking something's happened to someone back home, or this is much more like, because this is not Bobby Fulton, right? Yeah. And he stops and he looks at me. I said, "Stop, Bose, just tell me, mate." He stops and he looks at me and he says, "Robbo, you know that I don't care, eh?" And I was like, I had a million thoughts going through my head. I'm like, what are you talking about, Bose? He says, "Oh, you and Shane." And I got to tell you, mate, if anyone knows, this is the hardest conversation this man's ever had in his life.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And I was like, oh, thanks, Bose. He's like, but Robbo, he can't stay with you, mate, in the hotel. And I'm like, Bose, he's not. He's staying at a B&B up the road. And he says, so someone's got that wrong. He's not staying with you in the hotel. He says, no, mate, I wouldn't do that. And he was like, oh, great news, Robbo, great news, mate. That's all I needed to hear. I knew you wouldn't let the team down. I knew you were. But you got to understand, honestly, but it was that one moment. Like, there's the first time I had ever been validated as a gay man, right?
Yeah.
In the sport, it was like such a moment for me. Like,
And to come from him.
oh yeah, like it was such. And as I left the room, it was just like, I just turned around. I just said, "Thank you, Bose."
Yeah.
Then we had a kiss meeting, mate. Like, no, but it was just like he just said, "Mate, all good, Robbo."
Yeah.
Good.
Yeah. Because like such a tough environment to be in, and then to have to sort of hold other people's stories like this,
oh, mate,
but also go by the rules.
It's one of the most powerful moments of my life. Like, it was
I'm
just like the
sure.
first time
Yeah.
I'd ever been valid. I kind of left that. I kind of skipped out
Yeah.
of the room. I just felt like I kind of really realized then, like, the
Yeah.
importance of visibility, and like it was almost like, fuck, this is
Yeah.
this shouldn't be happening, but it's yeah.
Well, look, there's so much to talk about and so little time, but so then football kind of finished around 98. Is that correct?
I
Professional career?
went up to the Cowboys in '97. I was this out gay man who was made club captain. I was captain of the
Yeah.
Cowboys, which is another big event, in sport, particularly for the queer the queer community.
Yeah.
Yeah, and it was quite it was really progressive, like internationally as well.
Yeah.
The Cowboys were fantastic to me. I had such a
Yeah.
wonderful time in Townsville.
And look, we don't need to go into it, but I did watch the wonderful Australian story about the lost boy,
About
and
the,
about your beautiful friend Aaron.
oh right, I
And
thought you were going to touch on Blake. Blake Stenning was another boy that
right,
passed away a few years before.
uh,
Aaron Light is yeah.
but yeah. Look, we don't have to go into that one, but I just wanted to say, look, it was really beautiful to see that, to see you tell that story and relive it, and then kind of have a bit of
I've
resolution from it, I guess.
just written a play about that situation.
Yeah. Oh
Yeah,
wow.
so yeah, we're yeah, so
I guess what I took from it too, there it was that kind of push pull of sort of wanting to have kids, maybe not having the opportunity, but everyone kind of realizing that you would probably make a great dad.
yeah. I mean, I did go through a stage where I was giving sperm to a couple of lesbian couples that
Yeah,
I was friends with, but nothing eventuated.
yeah,
It's just luck of the draw. I just not luck of the draw. It's just as it's turned out. I mean, I don't regret anything. I'm
yeah,
not
yeah,
saddened by not
yeah.
having children. Yeah.
Did dad leave you with the same thoughts? Because was he a bit kind of like, oh, I wish he'd had a different
Like,
life, or
I mean, it's kind of weird, like when I first came out to my parents, that that was like when I was at South. It would have been about 90, I don't know, sorry, 80, 87, 88,
yeah,
maybe. Um, I mean, my parents didn't react to it well.
no, neither did mine.
I mean, I didn't speak to my parents for a couple like, not that I didn't speak to them, that they weren't willing to talk about it for about 2 or 3 years.
Yeah, I think the same thing happened to me. It was like that estrangement,
Yeah,
sort of that sort of distance. Yeah,
that's not an unfamiliar story.
yeah,
I will say, but they became my greatest allies. But like my
yeah,
dad, I mean, when my dad passed away, just before he passed away, I was part of a documentary, and he was being interviewed, my dad, and the interviewer, she said to him, "Oh, you must be very proud of your son for what he's done." I'm not like, my this his answer was like amazing. I mean, like I said, I have a brother and two sisters. My dad's answer was like so perfect. It was almost like he'd been written for him. He
yeah,
said, I'm equally proud of all my children,
yeah.
but I'm so fortunate I was gifted a gay son because I got to see the world as it really
Oh,
is.
wow.
When he said, I was like,
Wow.
It
Yeah.
was like, it was the perfect answer. It was almost like, you know, my dad had a real issue when I first came out, and my mum
Yeah.
did as well. Um, but that's not nothing unfamiliar. I mean,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
there are thousands of more stories out there that are much more inspirational, and a thousand more that are, you know, thousands more that are much more tragic and
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
consequences. I mean, I
Yeah.
got off. I mean, I think I was very fortunate.
And isn't it beautiful when you finally hear that? Like he's probably thought that for a long time, but never probably had the opportunity or never stepped into it.
Yeah,
And then it presents itself, and you're there, and you
yeah,
receive it, and it's like wow, like
yeah. It is one of those. Yeah, yeah.
pretty special.
Yeah, it is. Like, yeah, I've been very lucky. I mean, I consider myself so incredibly fortunate to
Yeah.
have had the family that I grew up with. You know, I have a wonderful relationship now with my partner Dan. We've been together like 19 years. And my first two long-term partners, Andrew and Shane. Shane passed away last year, unfortunately, but we stayed very close. We're
Mm.
still family. I mean, Andrew and I are still very much family. I've been I've been very fortunate. Yeah,
And are you an uncle
I've got
to
loads
them?
of nieces and nephews, and
Yeah,
yeah,
wonderful. Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. And are you kind of connected to them all, or
Oh, yeah,
are
yeah,
they
yeah, yeah,
all
yeah.
kind of
Oh,
in
yeah, absolutely.
Sydney?
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we have a close family. Like, yeah,
Yeah.
very closely connected.
Well, then after sort of the football career finishes, acting kind of creeps in. Well, it might have been there for a while. Tell me what was the driver for you to sort of going into acting?
I was always. I said before that I couldn't read and write
Yeah.
growing up, but I was always part of the ensemble at school, like in primary school, like in infants, primary school, high school. But I
Yep.
was always part of the chorus, or
Yep.
always had, because I could never read and write. I could never sight read properly. You know, like I
Yep.
couldn't just, and having to admit that. But I used to love being. I was always a bit of a show off as a kid.
Yep.
But and then so when footy kind of folded up for me, finished. Um, my car literally broke down about 200 yards up the road from where NIDA is, National Institute of Dramatic
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Kensington at Kingsford there.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
walking by there to go to a service station to get someone from the service station to come and fix the car. So as I was walking by, I just thought I'll duck into NIDA and see if there's someone there that might be able to help me get back into doing some acting classes or whatever. Because I
Mm.
used to love it, I'd always wanted to get back into. I've always loved being part of the ensemble.
Yeah.
I met a guy. This is that teacher that changed my life by the name of Kevin Jackson. Kevin passed away last year also. But now, I said to him, like I was hoping to do some community theatre, whatever, to get back into it. And Kevin had known my story.
Mm.
He just said, "Oh, you know," I told him about my past. I didn't tell him I couldn't read and write. And
Mm.
he said, "Oh, come on, we'll just do a sight read now for it." And I just like, so he pulled out a book and he gives me a piece and it was that moment I was just like, I can't. And
Yeah.
he felt the awkwardness, and like I was like, you know, you start flushing and all that. I'm just like,
Yeah.
and I just thought I'd just tell him. I said, "Man, I can't read and write." And he was like totally cool with it. Like he was like, "Oh, do you have dyslexia?" And I was like, "Oh, I haven't been diagnosed, but I just can't read properly." He said, "Don't worry." He said, "What we'll do is this changed my life. This moment changed my life."
Yeah.
He said, "What we'll do is this is when we used to have little cassette tapes." He said,
Yeah. Yeah.
we'll record the piece. You go
Yeah.
home and you learn it, and come back in a few days when you've learned it, and
Wow.
do the reading." No, but it was just the sheer way he accepted it. It's just like,
Yeah.
it's nothing. He said, "Oh, we can," and I
Yeah.
was like, "Oh,
So no judgment. It was just
yeah." It was
let's
totally, I was
let's think
totally
of a
knocked
different
off
way
it.
of doing it.
And
Yeah.
I was just like, and then so we did that, and he said, "Oh, you got some raw talent. You know, you probably, if you're interested, yeah, we can definitely help you out here." I ended up staying with Kevin, like getting some one-on-one stuff, coaching with Kevin for
Yeah.
about 12 months. Then I did the audition and did the 3-year course there at NIDA. And for the
Oh.
first year at NIDA,
Yeah.
like, it was kind of like, I love that man.
Yeah.
recording, doing all these recordings for any play I was in, or any readings. He was really helping me, going out of his way to help me.
Yeah.
His recordings, and I learned to read and write at NIDA through a system called phonetics.
Yep.
I don't know if anyone's aware of, but it
Yep.
changed my life. I mean, I can read and write.
My dad was dyslexic too.
Oh, right.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I can read and write now. I mean, I'm not Shakespeare, but I could definitely read
Yeah.
and write
Yeah.
enough.
Yeah.
I still struggle a bit, but
Yeah.
it's knowing how to read. It's totally changed my life, like my
Yeah.
whole
Yeah.
perspective of life.
Well, that led into a cameo in Star Wars in 2002, in Star Wars Episode 2, Attack of the
I think that was
Clones.
2001. That was before I was at
Oh,
night. That was just sheer luck. I knew someone who was on the job, and I wouldn't mind being in Star Wars.
yeah. Well, it's an impressive. Like there was 70, I think about 70 roles in TV and movies over the last
Yeah.
kind of since 2001, 2 or
Yeah,
so.
I went to the States for about 3 years as well. I did
Yep.
a whole load of B-grade stuff in the States, but I did a lot. The good thing
Was that 2012?
that was, yeah, about 11, 12, 13, yeah, about that time.
Yeah, because as I was reading through the credits, it was fun to kind of,
Oh, there was
because
I did,
2012 there was like
yeah,
Killer Clown,
yeah.
and you were
Oh,
the
Killer Clown
bailiff.
was fantastic, man. You have to see Killer Clown.
Yeah, and then there was Vendetta,
Oh my God,
and you were Thug number 1.
yeah. Oh my God, I've been doorman number 1, thug number 2, like security guy. Like I've done all those numbers. I've
And
actually
you were even Monster. Do you remember what you were Monster in?
I've been monstering. Oh my God. There was a
In
thing.
2016?
No, she's a monster.
13 days.
Oh my God, 13. Oh my. So like I did so many bad movies, right? But in saying that, but they were real learning. I shouldn't say that. I shouldn't say bad movies. They were just real learning. It was a real learning thing for me.
Yeah.
Like it was.
And they'd probably be fun.
Oh, some of them were really good. Like I mean,
Yeah.
some of them were really bad as well.
Yeah.
But I mean,
there was Fantasy Island. You were Dr. Torture.
Very good. Yeah, that we shot that in Fiji. Actually, that was when I was back in Australia.
Right.
We shot that in Fiji.
And then like other roles like Saltwater as Josh in 2012, and Lonesome in 2022.
Yeah, the Mr. In Between was a good show to be on as well. I mean, for anyone who hasn't watched Mr. In Between, the series, it's 3 seasons. It is the best Australian series. I'm not just saying because I was involved in one episode, but it is such. Scott Ryan, the leader, the lead in it, is also the writer.
Yep.
It is such an extraordinary show. But it didn't get a lot of publicity over here. It did huge business.
No, I don't think I've seen it. No.
In Between, it did huge business in the US. I think it's on binge at the moment.
Right. Okay.
But it's almost a crossover between Underbelly and Chopper. It has a real Australian humour.
Yeah.
It's about a hitman. It's just a wonderful story. I won't give the storyline up, but it's a fantastic. It is the best produced show out of Australia I've seen for a long time.
And how did Furiosa come along?
Oh, that was great too. George Miller is the biggest sweetheart of all time. I'm working with him.
I have heard that. Yeah.
Oh my God, he's such a good man, and he's so embracing, and so it's such a collective production for him. He listens to everyone. Like and he listens to any. If you have any concerns as an actor, or you want any input, he listens to everyone. Like, and he will tell you the reasons that it's a good idea or a bad idea or it doesn't work. He's just so he's such a collective. He works really collectively. It's like and he's just a really sweet man as well. Yeah.
Well, look, I'm just conscious of time, and there's a couple of things I wanted to touch on. I'd forgotten that you were runner-up in Dancing with the Stars.
Oh, that's what year was that?
2005.
Yeah, 5 and 6. Natalie. Oh my God.
That's right. Yeah, and I watched like they sort of clipped together kind of all your scenes.
Yeah.
But I was kind of wondering, you were very emotional
Oh, I
there.
love that girl. I mean,
Yeah.
we had the,
Was it the dancing that was kind of bringing the emotion out, like the fact that you were doing?
just the whole thing was quite weird because somehow I got through to the final. So the whole process was like about 16 weeks.
Yeah.
Because we started about 6 weeks before the first show, and there's 10 shows.
Yeah.
But Nat and I ended up having this wonderful relationship. It was like, I can't tell you. It was like it was like we were sweethearts. Like this, it was, and yeah, but we struck up this really close friendship, and there was a couple of those episodes, and there was one show where Nat was so ill she shouldn't have been there. Like she had this flu, like she should not have been there. Like she was ill, like she was so ill, and I even said to her, look, in the couple of days before, I said, baby, we don't have to do this. Like she literally couldn't get out of bed type thing.
Yeah,
She came down to Melbourne, for the show, and she turned up in Melbourne. I'm like, oh my god, I thought she was. I didn't think she could make it. Anyway, we did the show, and through the when we were doing the dance, I was like, even though I'm the man, I'm the lead. She was leading most of the dances normally, right? But in this one, I really had to like literally hold her up, and she kind of she had this moment where she forgot the steps and that.
Yeah.
And not forgot. She was just like, she was so ill. Anyway, when we stopped, one of the judges made comment about it. He said, "Oh, Ian, you messed up. You messed up the dance, and we could see that it was." And I was just going to take it on the chin, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah.
We had this wonderful moment. And Natalie said, "Oh no, like no, that was me. I was," and I was just, and that's when I said, "Oh." I gave her like it was nice. It was the greatest bonding moment. I love you, Nat. Like no one mentioned. Like this is on air. I just said, and then I told the judges she shouldn't be. She should be home in bed. This girl is so ill, and like it was just one of those moments. I think that's when the audience fell in love with Nat and I. Oh gosh, she was.
But I also kind of feel like kind of everyone was falling in love with you more and more too, that we were getting to know you more, and you were showing vulnerability and versatility and humor and emotion. And I kind of feel like over your career, you've sort of opened up more and more, and we've got to see more than just the rough footballer from early on,
Yeah, I mean,
which is just like the stereotype. And we've just sort of learnt more about you, I guess.
I mean, but the people are so complex, and I'm no more complex.
Yeah.
I think it's like, like just with my situation, being a gay man, and like I was always totally fine with being gay, like same-sex attraction. I never had an issue with it, so I was totally fine. I mean, there must be other men out there playing professional sports that the same sex attracted, and really struggling with it. And I don't know. Like,
well, it's amazing that you sort of just had that courage and conviction, and you were true to yourself, and it wasn't hidden.
I come back to saying I've been really fortunate. Like it's every person has their coming out story. And again, they can be inspirational or tragic. But there are more stories out there, much more inspirational and much more tragic than mine. It's just I'm really glad that I finally had that moment in '94 when with Bobby Fulton. It just like made me realize like visibility. Like, and I was out. Everyone knew I was gay. It almost let people breathe out. I'm just glad that I just like, oh no, mate, okay, maybe I should just totally come out. Like, let everyone know that. Like, make a statement. I was always against making the statement. Not that I was ashamed about being gay. Everyone knew I was gay, but I mean that took me a while to get to that point. So I should imagine there are, and I'm talking about men's contact sport here and team sport, like, because women's sport. I mean, I work for the NRL. I do some educational stuff around inclusion, diversity, and belonging. Go out and we talk to all the clubs, all the players, and the women's sports seem to be all over this. Like, I mean, it's totally not an issue. They talk freely and openly about. I mean, look at the Matildas, the way they were embraced.
Amazing.
Like, but men's sport, it's still particularly contact sport and blokey sport, you know, like, like getting in, you know, having to have a shower, like in the shower. Like, I mean, I had this story when I was playing State of Origin, and I got into the shower, and one of the guys was in there, was kind of turned away from me. It was just like, as if, and I was like, oh, trust me, don't flatter yourself. You're safe. Trust me, you're safe. It's just that me saying that to him, that made it a bit lighter. And then him seeing the foolishness of that whole, you know what I mean? Sometimes I like to think that if I had any good qualities, I don't think I take myself very serious, like too seriously, so seriously that, you know,
and it's almost those little mini lessons that you're teaching along the way.
Well, whatever, but you know, I do believe people on our side. I feel like, you know, we have to be on. I feel like it helps when I'm understanding other people's misunderstanding.
You
know, if I don't try and, like, you know, I really said, I don't try and drive it down their throat. That's probably not a good choice of words. You know, like, I just think you have to be like, and I think that's the best place to start. Like, we want things to change, but it's, you know, like, there's still a long way to go. There's still a lot of progress to be made. I mean, women's sport, I think, is a really good example of that. We still need loads of education, and I do believe it's all about. I mean, it's just like what I do now is like, I don't know if you can see that. I mean,
it's a good segue, because I wanted to ask about a little bit about you turning 60 this year, and also Qtopia, because I know you've been doing some wonderful work with Qtopia in that space, and I know you came and spoke at the Love Project Love Club gathering last year, and I know I've got a lot of people in that group that are big fans of yours. So could you just briefly tell us what Qtopia is about?
Qtopia, it's an LGBTIQA plus. Like, we're not supposed to call ourselves a museum, but I'm just going to say it's a queer museum. It's because I think that I really believe now we need to embrace that word museum. But we're not technically a museum because we don't archive. Right? It's a centre for history and education. That process started for me nearly 10 years ago at a vigil for a young guy by the name of Tyrone Unsworth. Tyrone was a 13-year-old boy who was bullied for being gay, and he just got sick of being bullied. Told his friend one day he was going to take his own life, and that's what he did the next day. And I don't know what it is about Tyrone's story, because, I mean, as a 60-year-old gay man, that's quite a familiar story for me. Like, I don't like to say that, like, but it's true. I mean, I've heard very similar stories, like I said, about consequences earlier, you know, tragic ways of when people come out. I mean, there is inspiration in this trend. So,
well, it sort of shows you that we still have so much to do.
We do.
If young people are still feeling that bad about themselves and not feeling comfortable to be themselves, then we've still got stuff to do to make it easier.
I mean, the idea of a queer museum has been around for 40 years. It's nothing. You know, like, I was at that vigil with my partner Daniel and Linda Scott, who was the councillor for the Sydney City Council. She was Labor councillor of the Sydney City Council, and Linda and I had just come off another attempt at getting a museum up, an AIDS museum up, just like about a year before that. And we didn't have very good results. But what we did learn was you had to get if this was going to happen, you had to have all levels of government on board. So I mean, I'm a Labor person. Linda's a Labor person. Daniel, my partner's a Labor person. We just started approaching Labor ministers. And listen, I'm just going to try. This is not a bipartisan thing. It's not me being political. I'm just saying that's where we started, because we knew a lot of ministers.
That's what you did.
So that's what we did. I mean, at the time, Labor weren't in power federally or state-wise. And
then the wonderful David Paulson came on board.
David came came on about 4 years later. And
Oh, right. Okay.
what happened was Linda, Dan, and I had just went out and asked a whole lot of ministers about what do we need to do about, would you be on board about it? But the one thing we did learn was if we could get education based on education and around education, there was a better chance of getting up. So that's what we approached it on. Bumped into David for about 2016. Oh no, it was probably later. Oh, no, sorry, about 2020, 2021. Yeah. He'd literally minutes before come from a meeting with Dory Cooper, the famous David Cooper, Dr. David Cooper, who had led the way for in the
HIV space.
The HIV space, yeah. He did literally apparently just come from a meeting 10 minutes before, bumped into us and said, you know, they were going to try and he was going to try and get a museum up. I said, look, we tried this something 4 or 5 years ago. Maybe like let's join forces and get this. Let's make sure it's an education thing because it won't get up on the AIDS museum thing alone. We've already tried that, right?
Yeah.
So that's what we did. We just kind of and then we approached all those ministers.
And I love that. I love that idea that it's about education. I love that idea that it's about education. It's about kind of
education became our core crop.
Well, look, I'm just conscious of time, Ian. Sorry to and the wonderful Dan that's probably exhausted. But just before we start to wind it up, I did want to just touch on how you're feeling about turning 60 in July.
60 years young. I think after you've turned 40, you kind of realise, I'm happy. You know, like I mean this quite seriously. I'm so fortunate. I'm so fortunate. I mean, I'm in quite good health. I actually had a defibrillator put in last year.
Oh wow! I've had a couple of stents, so I'm holding in strong. Yeah.
Got this stent stuck in. But I mean, I'm in pretty good health. The doctor says I can go back to living my life now.
Yeah, great.
Dan's in really good health. You know, my family.
There's something about sort of moving forward into older age with these people around you because we're all moving the same way. Yeah. We've all had sort of similar histories. We've all shared everything. Yeah. There's something kind of comforting in that.
It's and it is nice, like the whole thing with what's happening with Qtopia.
Yeah, amazing.
Those education programs rolled out and schools are coming in. That's where we really validate what Qtopia.
And the new exhibitions are starting soon, aren't they?
They start next week.
Great. And I think there's 3 new exhibitions or something, isn't there?
I think you're right.
Yeah,
so 3 or 4.
So there's kind of some standard stuff that has been there, but there's new costumes and
But the education stuff is our foundation.
It's really powerful. Like I really enjoyed it, and obviously I was quite attached to kind of the HIV epidemic. So the ward is really powerful, and I think it's fantastic. I really love it. I'm encourage everyone to go there and surprised when people don't know about it or haven't been. So
we got to. It'd be great. Yeah, we need to get the word out there.
Yeah. Is there anything that you would tell a 15 or 14-year-old Ian?
Well, I would just. It's kind of weird. I had this conversation with Dan the other day. I just said the only thing I would just say to you is like, don't worry, it's all going to be okay. Don't worry, everyone else is going to be okay. I was always worried about my family and how they would. I was never worried about being gay myself. I was always worried about other people about me being gay. You know, just just don't worry. They'll be okay. You'll be okay. Just visibility.
Yeah. Well, look, wonderful. Thank you so much. We might call it because it's getting to 7:30. Lots we could talk about. We could go on forever, I'm sure. But you're the 9th person in this block that we were funded to do. But I'm happy to announce that we're going to carry the series on. And we've already got Kendall Walton, the president of Dykes on Bikes, for next month. and I've got half a dozen people that I'm already pursuing to keep it going. So I really appreciate it. We've got nothing but love for you. I know the community has a huge amount of love for you, Ian, and it's been nice to pull it apart, pull it out a little bit, and thank you very much for sharing. Really appreciate it.
My pleasure. It's very nice. Again, I feel very fortunate. Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. And thank you to our interpreter, Dan
Yeah.
Hatley. Really appreciate it. Called in at the last minute, but thank you so much. Hope we get to work together again.
Thanks, team.
All right. Thank you, everyone. Bye for now.
Bye.